Shalom, bitches. My end is here at audio only, and we're trucking along with Billy Bob. I have no updates, so let's just do this thing. Part 5. Let us begin. Humans were a paranoid lot after their first contact with the Xeno species involved a fight for survival. And it didn't help that for all the actions the Unified Human Government, or UHG, took to persuade the Galactic Government humans weren't all that bad, the Americans surged ahead with defense spending and espionage. Of course, in a way that worked to everyone's advantage. The UHG got to say truthfully they had no control over the Americans, who rampantly provoked Xenos on their borders, and spied on everyone they possibly could, while then giving what they gained or learned to the UHG. Since spacefaring species all had one government, the Xenos simply assumed Americans were some sort of subspecies and treated each government as entirely separate entities. One such espionage program the Americans had going took advantage of the fact humans didn't mind being out in the void of deep space. They had taken up major contract with other Xenos to repair and construct new FTL comm buoys, and even some of the galactic government comm lines. Since no one else was willing to go out and physically inspect these buoys in deep space, they didn't notice the new attachments the American crews left behind. Small robotic operators would monitor all the Xeno traffic and copy it off back to intel stations. With every passing year, the network got larger, as Xenos mistook the human fanaticism for repairing and updating comm buoys for their desire to prove themselves as a spacefaring species. At one of those intel stations, however, a tech was sipping at a cup of coffee when he noticed a flashing light on his console. Bringing up the communication packet sent to him by a spy operator, designated as IHC, his eyebrows quickly shot up. "Sir!" he called, waving over his superior. Specialist Rebecca Jones moved over and leaned over to see what her tech had found. "I'm not sure how credible this is, but someone is setting up an open bounty on a human. They also appear to be sending military orders to naval vessels. Do we know much about the species?" "Some sort of spacecraft, sir." She nodded as she read over the information on screen. "Find out where their space is. I'll contact Langley and have them prep a carrier fleet. If they prove hostile, we'll glass a few cities and see how they feel about that." "Yes, sir. What should I do about the endangered human? Is he American?" "I have to do some digging, but it sounds like he's a space trucker, so there's a very good chance he is." She nodded at that and thought it over. "I'm sure he can handle himself then, if he's a space trucker. But I'll see about getting some agents to track him down and see if he's getting us involved in a war." "To take him out? Fuck no. If a lone American pisses off some Xenos so much they declare war on us, that makes them the aggressors. Galactic law clearly states defenders have free reign in combat against aggressors, so long as we don't engage in mass genocide. If they have any valuable resources, we can take the planets and toss them over to the UHG. Another flashing light made the tech tap his console once more. Sir, it seems another Xeno species is trying to find out where our main diplomatic center is so they can send some officials for negotiations." "What? Where are they sending the communications? To UHG Central?" "No, sir. They're trying to contact Washington directly. Apparently they're interested in alliance after meeting some guy named Billy Bob Space Trucker." Emily couldn't believe the varied and intense music that Billy Bob had her listen to while he slept through his own rest cycle. From what she understood, this was all pre-contact music. How had one species developed so many varied genres all on their own? Most species had one or two styles that carried across their music, but the one style she could find that connected human music was their love for repetitive beats or choruses in songs. That, and most of their music seemed to be war chants and combat songs, but that might just be Billy Bob's music. The first record she listened to, written by someone named Floyd of Pink, had been especially haunting and beautiful.
When Billy Bob had finally started to stir, she realized she had skipped her second sleep cycle just to listen to more music. Her body was a little sore from the lack of rest at this point, and she needed some time to just process the music that she had been enthralled by. So when he woke up, she began to move back to the bunk. "I'm going to have to sleep for this first chunk of driving, Billy Bob. You know where to go?" The trucker pulled his hat back into place and nodded. Getting up, he walked back through the cabin and found Mittens quickly hopped off the bunk before Emily could toss him off, and followed along behind the trucker.
"Sure, but I need to work out for a bit. Keeping the cabin set to galactic standard gravity for you kinda loosens my muscles a bit too much."
She nodded as he quickly pulled a can of cat food from the cupboard, popping the lid before slapping the meat puck into a plate for Mittens. Then walked back into the main cargo hold of the ship. Crates lining the walls stacked all the way to the ceiling, filled with supplies for the agri colony he had to take them to. Cranking up the gravity to Earth norms, he tapped on the console to the side to get some music going.
"Alright, calisthenics, then weightlifting,"
he said with a nod. "Rising up, back on the streets." His face was set as he began to run up the length of his Longhorn's cargo bay, starting his workout. In the end, he spent a full hour running, jumping jacks, push-ups, crunches, lifting crates, pull-ups, everything he could think of with what he had in the cargo bay. Billy Bob was no stranger to fights, and it seemed like his new friend was going to get him into more than normal, so he needed to work out a bit to prepare for it. He might have a decent-sized beer gut, but he was a blue-collar man after all. Under the fat was muscle. His arms were still strong, even if he didn't work out to bodybuilder levels. He didn't need to get some sort of specific gym workout. He just needed good old-fashioned exercise. And to keep punching things in the face. Once he was done, he was sweating pretty good, and figured it was time for a shower. Careful not to make too much noise walking through the cabin, he slipped into the bathroom and started up the shower. Once he was cleaning up, he had to remind himself not to sing like he usually did. Didn't need Emily groggily waking up to off-key Tom Petty or something similar. Then, clean and dry, he got dressed again and got the Longhorn fired back up before moving into the FTL lane. The prospect of an illegal space goblin market excited him. Maybe he'd get real meat. Well, space meat. The burger, Space Burger, the day before, had reminded him how much better the real stuff was compared to protein mush. He picked up his headphones, setting them in place as Mittens hopped up to the co-pilot seat.
"You excited to get some real meat there, Mittens? Maybe buy you some space rats to hunt in the cargo bay."
He reached over and gave the cat's head a few rubs and then turned on his music. He couldn't sing Tom Petty in the shower, but this was good too. "Well, she was an American girl." When Emily got up, she booted Mittens from the co-pilot seat and enjoyed more music with Billy Bob. He had to explain that the British invasion wasn't actually an invasion. American musicians were the greatest, but that didn't mean other nations couldn't create some amazing artists too. She was confused how Americans seemed to be friendly with the British after the Revolution, and he explained to her that it was a bit like a father and son who hated each other and got into fights. The dad had been big and mean, and his kid grew up in his shadow. But over time the dad got older and weaker, and his kid got bigger and stronger, and just as mean. So they managed to connect again as friends instead of enemies, thanks to their mutual hatred of various things. Like one of those sappy movies. Sort of. After another several hours of that, she took another nap before they arrived at the station. When she got up the second time, they were almost at it. The space goblins had set up the station in the shadow of some sort of dead moon, in a creepy-looking system that had a number of dead rock planets and a white dwarf in the center. "Okay, you're going to have to be careful here. These sort of stations attract all sorts of Deathworlders, even ones who can give you trouble. I should be able to talk us in." He shook his head at that.
"Oh no, I know these sorts of places. You're my guest, and you aren't talking us in anywhere. I've got this."
The station didn't look like the basic refueling stations. Instead, the ships had to dock along the same face of the station, and there wasn't a cargo hauler to be seen. These were sleek, purpose-built vessels of war, smaller-scale capital ships and pirated patrol crafts. His Longhorn stuck out like a sore thumb. But then again, it did that around cargo ships too. Human ships in general just didn't fit in. Once he had docked, it was time to change. He opened up his security locker and began to dress more appropriately for the job at hand. He kept the jeans and plaid shirt, but lost the cowboy boots in favor of steel-toed ones. The hot sauce holster came off, and his regular holster came on. He tucked his M1911 into the holster, and tucked 6 extra magazines into the pockets around his holster. After that, he pulled on the black combat vest that was a mix of ceramic and Kevlar plating. Then he slung a Remington Tactical 2070 over his shoulder, before filling the combat vest pockets with various slugs, buckshot, and birdshot rounds. A few Dragon Breath rounds as well, on the off chance he needed them. Finally, he tucked a Bowie into his left boot, then another in his belt. Pulling the Remington off his back, he loaded a few rounds and then worked the pump with a very satisfying ka-chunk. Lock and load. Emily was about to talk when he quickly slung the Remington over his back. Nope, wait, hold on. Then he pulled free of the locker a wooden Louisville Slugger, the words MLB Prime Ash burnt into the side, and replaced his hat with a camo one with just the American flag on it. All right, now I'm ready. His Louisville had a few scratches and some stains from previous use, but he wouldn't trade it for the world. Any world. Oh, what are those things? She said, pointing at the M1911 and Remington. Oh, forgot these aren't common. So, you know how galactic government has strict laws against weapon possession and stuff? Well, they don't have very strict laws regarding ceremonial cultural items. They also don't have a concept of firearms. All you Xenos have been using energy weapons and shit for centuries. Not humans. These are what we call guns. They house these little casings filled with chemicals that fire off once we pull the trigger. It causes a small controlled explosion that launches a chunk of metal a few hundred feet per second. The action ejects the casing and pushes up a new one in this gun. He patted the 1911. But this one requires me to work the pump. You'll see if I need to use them. Emily's mouth hung open as he explained to her what he was using. You've covered yourself with explosives? Well, they're made not to go off until I want them to, but yes. How do you control such weapons? You don't have a targeting computer in your eye. Those are tightly restricted. Fuck, humans don't need them. I guess we were lucky enough to evolve with the concept of tracking depth and movement or shit. I don't know, physics. You saw me hit that space flecko yesterday with the bottle. Oh. She paused and then gave a shrug. I guess I'll trust you. He grinned at her and then moved back to the airlock. Hopefully you won't need to use them. He looked back at her and thought it over. Actually, might be more fun if I need to. He smiled wide as the airlock cycled and he stepped out into the station. Unlike the clean, well-lit refueling centers he was used to, this place had those stupid fucking flickering lights from horror movies. He glared up at the ceiling for a moment. He hated those stupid fucking flickering lights. There were stains here and there on the walls as he walked towards the entrance to the main station, and couldn't help but grin as he saw the 5 figures manning some sort of security station. These looked like big blue space orc bears with horns and longer tails. But really, with those underbites and big features and guts, he figured they were more like space bouncers. Then again, space borks. He nodded. Yes, space borks. They had an assortment of weapons and targeting computers all over their faces, which meant the space goblins here had to be connected. However, from what he could see, they were just wearing normal clothing, with those shield-built type things. Lazy Xenos always figuring weapons were energy-based. The one in front looked bored as he stepped up, holding a hand as he grunted at Billy Bob. Stop right there, ugly! We don't know you, and... He didn't get further than that. Billy Bob just picked up his pace to a jog and swung as he moved. The bat collided with that fat, ugly head, snapping off a tusk as it sounded like he'd just creamed a line drive past third base. As the rest began to perk up, it was pretty much too late. Billy Bob was already up close. The second one he slammed in the side of the knee. There was a sickening crack as the creature howled and toppled like a falling tree. The third he jabbed in the face with the end of the bat, crunching the targeting computer into its 4 eyes. It cried out and clutched at its face while he moved on. The fourth had been stupid enough to leave his weapon on a crate. As he reached for it, Billy Bob brought down his steel-toed boot on the Space Bork's hand. As it squealed and looked up at him in terror, Billy Bob brought the bat down on his head. Good night. The last finally heard the high-pitched tone of a weapon lock and growled as he prepared to fire. But Billy Bob was faster. He pulled a knife from his belt, tossing it at the Bork's arm, sinking the blade into the creature's shoulder. It howled and dropped the weapon, dripping blue blood as it gulped in terror. Billy Bob slowly approached as it gasped out, "Why are you here?" Billy Bob stepped up to the larger creature and yanked the blade free, wiping it off on the Bork's fur before slipping it back into his belt. He then held the bat in one hand, resting it over his shoulder. "Us? We came to party. Now, take me to your leader." I fucking love that line. It's so good. He saw the opportunity, and he went for it. Alright guys, please like and subscribe if you like what I do here, and go ahead and tell all your friends about the amazingness that is audio only. With that, have a nice one.